Want to do recording.
Recording.
Hi,
Awesome.
this is Adrian Midwood with Plastic Oceans Canada, and that is Tim Stephenson, our
Hello.
Director of Education up here in Canada. And I guess we're going to go through a few of your accolades as well. So, Minister Award-winning teacher, Director of Education for Plastic Oceans. You're still currently a high school teacher in Walnut Grove.
Right. Walnut Grove in Langley, BC.
And then you lecture on stars and stuff.
Yeah.
What's your lecture series called?
Well, my main thing is astronomy. I know most people like to call it astrology, but that's because they just don't know what they're talking about. But yeah, I teach astronomy, and so I have a full year-long course, grade 12. So it's a pretty cool course. A lot of kids take it.
Nice. But you're also doing a lecture series on that as well, right? Like, weren't you doing like a theater or?
Yes, I am. I call it Beyond the Sky. So it's something I'm just dabbling with at this point. I've had one public lecture. It went really well. We had 65 people come in. I thought it was kind of funny because it was just a total experiment. I thought I'll just toss out an advertisement on Eventbrite and I charged for it too. Look, I got something cool to say and I'm going to charge you for it. And 65 people showed up. I didn't charge students, but anyway, I said to them, look, you're all sitting here on a Wednesday night listening to me talk about physics for an hour and a half, but a bunch of science geeks, but they really liked it.
Nice. And then you've also done a TEDx. I guess if you send me through that link, what I can do is when I post this video, I'll have your Instagram there and a link to your TEDx. So what I really liked about that was you talked about, everyone kind of hammers down on millennials, but you talked a lot about the next generation that's coming up. So mostly like your current students and the ones that maybe graduated in recent years and the difference of what's going on there. And I found that quite interesting. I think a lot of people would as well.
Yeah, the whole premise being that if we're going to see changes, particularly on my TEDx, it was a lot to do with climate, and if we're going to bring about a change, it's got to start with this current generation. So education is key. I really focused on the example that I love is how when Sputnik went up in 1957, the immediate response was, let's change the curriculum and let's change the education and get kids ramped up, because they knew that they're going to have a bunch of engineers and scientists who are going to develop the next great wave of space technology. They got to keep up with. At that time, the Russians were leading the way. So they turned to the schools and it worked. And within, that was 57, 58, the curriculum changed. And then by 69, they're landing on the moon. That's an 11-year turnover of education. And when I think I had it in my TED talk as well, the average age of the ground control was somewhere around 28 years old, which means that they were around 15 or 16 at the time of Sputnik. Okay. So they jumped right on board and got their education and got us to the moon.
I mean, it's kind of interesting when you actually look back at some of that stuff when there was, technology wasn't at our fingertips, how people really focused and applied themselves and, like, so I was born in 81 and there's some people say that was kind of like the first year of the millennials, and every once in a while I'll proudly wear that flag because I definitely, as you know, I mean, we worked together, so that I dropped off a career that I had to do something that meant something to me, and whether or not that meant that I was financially secure or not, I kind of followed that dream. Still definitely had the work ethic and didn't have the entitlement at all. It was like show up every single day. But yeah, you really notice like generations prior to mine that, people really, really made sure they had a trade before they started trying to act like a professional or an expert in the field. And I think, there's a generation that's just a little bit younger than me. We're not saying all of them, but there are a lot of people out there that seem to think that they're going to jump from taking a couple-year course and then being a consultant or an expert in this field. And, we see that a lot with influencers and just that seems to be a theme. But I'm kind of on your side where, anyone that's sort of say 23, 24 and younger has really shifted back to that sort of like applying yourself and getting into a field, understanding it, getting work experience, and, kind of back to doing the hard yards a bit more.
Yeah, and the thing that you can couple all of that with is kids these days have a strong connection to purpose in the planet, and there's a lot of kind of missions that kids take on. I love things like the coral gardeners in Tahiti are a phenomenal group of young people who said, for now I'm going to give up on my formal education. I'm going to do what I can to save the ocean. I love that.
Yeah.
Back in, a generation, mine and probably older, would say, oh no, what you got to do is you got to get good grades in school, because what that'll do is get you into a good college degree, will get you a good job. Then you have a good 40-year career with a nice solid pension. And then at 65, you retire, and at 77, you'll die. And that's life.
You plant
right?
corn between 65 and 77 if you want.
Yeah. Like it's that whole mentality, I think, is changing, and I think it needs to change, because it's not the way the world works anymore. So we can't be preaching in schools that, the number one thing is marks, and the number one thing really is, what's your mission in life? What's your purpose? What do you really find drives you? And then once you figure that out, that's when you go grab the education that you need. So if I find out that I really want to save the coral reefs in Tahiti, well, I better go and do a little bit of a coursework and perhaps get a degree in marine biology, focusing on the reefs, and then go and do what I can to save it. And in the meantime, grab some practical education and experience, and go there and dive with them and plant the corals and do what they're doing. And I think that's what people will do more and more of. And I think what's holding them back is my generation and older, who are saying, oh, no, that's not good. You got to get a job. You got to pay the bills. Don't forget about your white picket fence, right? And that's just not the way it is anymore.
Yeah, and it was really weird because my career, as you know, I became a boat captain and scuba dive instructor and such. So basically my life revolved around the ocean. And before that, it was I actually did do a little bit of activism stuff in high school when I was just learning about things that I cared about. And I really quickly learned that being an activist didn't work with my brain. I more disappeared and went off and just tried to live a simple life and be at one with the thing that I liked. And then when I went into conservation after, it was from actually understanding how the ocean worked. It was very practical side. And when I first got into plastics, it was because someone asked if I could help clean up the ocean. And I was like, well, I'm sure that's probably important. It seems like the right thing to do. And
as well,
and any idea about any of the science or, the real effects of what plastic in our waterways was at that time. And then very quickly after, you start meeting all these scientists and all these different people that have been working on it for quite a while. And you're just flooded with all this information. And it was like, and then all of a sudden now, as we've seen over the last couple of years, the world has caught up. But for my background, it was very much a practical knowledge of how the ocean actually works and cycles and ends up in different places. And by living and breathing the ocean, you understand weather, so you understand how plastics are going to travel and affect marine life, right?
Yeah. The fact that there's 5 gyres is sort of like now becoming more and more common knowledge, right? And it's like that nobody would even know this word gyre prior to more recently, but now people are getting, they're kind of waking up to the way the oceans work.
So that's kind of funny. I mean, 8 years ago when I got into this topic, 5 Gyres was already an organization, still definitely one of the leaders in science with it, but there's way more than 5 Gyres. It was just like at that time, there was 5 major known Gyres, and the organization 5 Gyres, who does amazing work, they have discovered other ones, and there's, a gyre really is just a congregation zone, as you would know, being a science teacher. But talking about influence and talking about students, so how long have you been a teacher now?
I'm going to say 27 years. I actually got hired by Langley in 93. So
okay,
I guess that's 27 years.
So, I mean, I've met a few of your students. I guess probably the older one would be Britt, who works out here now on the West Coast. I'm not sure if she's still with them, but was with the Ucluelet Aquarium. And actually, she started the microplastic survey program that through the aquarium, and then that's partnered now with Parks Canada, I believe, if not other sides of the aquarium are. They wrote and designed the program that's out at the Cedar Coast Field Station, that actually our 5-day trip out in Vancouver Island, that was going to be an aspect of it. So and Britt would be about 28 now?
She likely would be about 28, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm going to pull a picture of her up on a screen share, just throw her under the bus. But I know you've had students that are older than her, but you know, I just find this is like you've had such an influence on different students with different projects. We're gonna probably start here with Britt, so I'm gonna screen share it,
Okay.
and hopefully nothing incriminating is going to be on my desktop. Um,
That's my
so
it's my Instagram.
that's the only incriminating thing. So is this is Britt here, yeah?
Yeah, that's her.
Okay.
That's her. That's me beside her. That leaning against the tree. That's in Tofino as well.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this is one of your students who graduated high school and then went to UVic. Is that correct?
Yeah, she went to UVic and got her degree. Now, I wish I could say definitively, but I'm pretty sure it was in some aspect of marine biology. But she became focused on the plastics, and you can see in the picture behind her, that's her in the pink shirt doing a quadrat with sampling for microplastics and the beaches on the west coast there over in I suspect that's Wickaninnish Beach perhaps, or somewhere over there on that side.
Yeah, and it might be even Banfield because I remember seeing some stuff where she also goes over to the Banfield field station and has done work there. And I think with some of your current students that had some projects going on. And we actually ended up, once I found out about all this, when we started designing these student experiences, I went up and I met with her and her friend who set up this program and talked to them about like, hiring them to be sort of our education
Oh,
lead.
she'd be fantastic.
Well, yeah, but sadly for us, Britt and her boyfriend have actually started their own organization doing amazing different projects. So,
I'm not surprised.
so we kind of missed the bus on that one. But I guess you're saying, yeah, that's when you were out here visiting and ran into her. You ran into each other just by accident, wasn't it?
We totally did. She was giving our tour at the Euclid Aquarium, and I'm the whole time thinking, gosh, I know that girl. And she's saying the same thing to herself. And then when she's finished, I said, how do we know each other? And then she says, oh, Walnut Grove. Of course. She's actually heading off on the one that's called, I think if it's the
Expedition, yeah.
Anyway, run by Emily Penn. She's doing a leg of that round the world voyage on ocean plastic research. That's an interesting one to look at. I know you know Emily Penn as well, don't you?
Not in person. I mean, we've had very, very brief communications. There's just been a lot of crossovers. Emily became quite famous, and I've always been a hermit. So she's more in the public eye. And yeah, they've got a great expedition going on. I believe they're just showing up in Tahiti now. Actually, an old friend and colleague is on that trip from Australia, Laura Wells. Her and her husband started a branch of my old organization in Australia, and she happens to be on this current leg, or was last week. And so I think Britt's was going to be Fiji to Vanuatu, because when I met her last year, she was, because as you know, I've spent about 6 years in the last 6 years recently in Fiji working on this sort of stuff. So we had a quick chat about it. But it's going to be interesting to see if that voyage is going to go on hold or not. But I don't really want to get into COVID right now. It's I think that's
deal with one global catastrophe at a time, I suppose.
Exactly. I mean, I think that we've got a lot of things going on in the world, and you know, we actively work on one pandemic or epidemic, because this is global for sure. And I don't want to brush over COVID. I just think that there's enough going on with that and enough discussion, so we can focus on some positive things that you get up to. So talking about influence, this is a project that you had, these bricks that I'm showing right now. You had this going prior to me coming home and taking on the Plastic Oceans office. And I think this is, when I joined, you were just sort of an advisor. I was like, why is this guy not a director? And I kind of strong-armed you into joining our board.
But, I'm glad you did too.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Well, the funny thing is, I mean, I'm an astronomy teacher, right? I'm wearing I got my NASA shirt on here, like. But kids will come to me because I've set it up that way. I've set it up that I more than anything else, the best thing I can do as a teacher is develop relationships with kids and listen to them and get excited with them on the things that they're passionate about. And so I get kids all the time coming to me and asking, hey, could we do this? Could we do that? And this couple of boys 3 years ago, I guess 3 years ago, came to me and said, we want to start a club, but we don't know what we want to do. I said, well, okay. What do you like? They said they wanted to call it the engineering club. I said, well, I don't know anything about engineering, but I'm not an engineer, but I'm a project manager. So I said, look, if I were you, you want to do something that means something. So to me, one of the greatest problems in the world is what do we do with single-use plastic? And we got to come up with something to do with that. And so I said, why don't we try something like that? And so we came up with, you can see these pictures of these bricks. We each one of those bricks will hold or contains about 35 to 40 shopping bags, single use. That's low density LDPE, and we would melt them down. A lot of people said, "Oh, what about the fumes and everything?" And okay, admittedly, but we weren't bringing them to a flash point. They weren't incinerating. They were simply coming to their melting point.
Yeah,
Which is
which is a very different thing, because I love this topic about, like, because as you know, I've worked in gasifying to alternative fuels and capturing these things, and I love conversion numbers, and especially coming from a teacher, I can't wait for people to actually understand this. You know, you're not bringing it to a flash point, you're not emitting noxious chemicals, you're bringing it to a melting point to compress it into a second product.
Yes, and so the boys got together along with our woodshop teacher. I got to give that guy credit too. That was Darren McKay, and he allowed them to come into the shop, and they built out of wood a press with a lever. They used sort of the physics involved in applying pressure, and they just would use their own body weight, and they would press this.
They just lean on it.
They just lean on it, and they'd throw this slop of melted bags in. We melted it in corn oil. There they are washing, they're cooling down after coming out of the press, and they would press this big slop of mess, and after about a minute it solidified, and then we tossed it in the cold water with some soap, and we'd wash the oil off, and the darn bricks are solid as anything. You can throw them around like a brick, you know, except that they don't shatter like clay. They kind of bounce like plastic.
Yeah.
And we ended up building we built a planter out of them. And it was kind of a very cool symbolic thing that these plants are growing in a planter made out of plastic bricks. And the planter took about 40 or 45 bricks, and at 30 or 35 bags per brick, you know, there's like 12 or 1,400 plastic bags. They're very decorative. They're very interesting to look at. They would all take on the color of the bags that we would happen to melt. And so they're all unique. It got a lot of attention.
Well, they won an award for this, didn't they? And that was at the Idea Summit 2018.
That was 2018. So Langley School District runs this thing called the Idea Summit, and they presented there. They didn't actually win top prize, partly because poor William was such a good guy. He was the student who kind of led the whole thing, and he took so much responsibility. I told him, hey, don't worry about it, man. But he thought he blew the presentation. Everybody in the Idea Summit who came up to us after said, oh, you guys should have won. By far, that was the best idea. And but William's like, yeah, but we didn't win because I totally blew the presentation. Like, oh, well, you know, so what? But you got a lot of attention. You did a great thing, and you made this great product, and people loved it.
But because of you roped me into being a judge at the last Ideas X Summit. Yeah. So because of this project alone, last year, so 2019, the Langley Ideas Summit had Ideas X, and that was just projects on solving plastic pollution. So whether that was elimination, repurposing, finding alternatives, and you threw me under the bus so hard on one of the hardest things I ever had to judge. You want to talk about your student feeling weird about blowing a presentation? I mean, I sat there with these other two people, and one was from Foresight, who's an innovator, and the other lady was a curator at Science World. And so we've got these like two really smart people and me watching these kids.
Wonder guy.
This random guy, just like watching these kids give like basically the best Shark Tank presentations you could ever imagine in your life, like pitching how to solve plastic pollution. And it was so hard because like I think there was 8 solid projects, and the kids that ended up winning, and it was really weird because I mean, I'll openly say it wasn't necessarily the best project, but they went to like great lengths to translate their materials into like 8 different languages, and they had all the mediums for advertising. And I think they even had a couple of offers for a potential book deal after. But I mean, there were so many great projects there. And talk about those presentations. I mean, like I'd never seen anything like it. Like if I ever had to
I
go up
know.
and give a pitch like
I,
that, it was,
this is what I'm saying about kids these days. They're a different breed than they used to be. They get so passionate about what it is that they're what it is they're doing. Like, if you go back to that one there that you just had there, that group right there, that group of kids right there. Now they weren't necessarily involved in plastic, but you can see William in the background melting the plastic.
that's him.
There, that's William right there, and you can see the big stack. I had a mountain of plastic bags in my classroom over there. Now, what I loved about this picture is, look what it says: 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Do you know where your children are? They're still at school, because when you find value in your education, time doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Huge respect to these two clubs, and
I mean, that's true, because the thing is, like, a lot of people are always like, oh, well, what do we do with kids these days? And like, you're one of these teachers that you just give them something to believe in, give them something to focus on. And like you said, it's 5 o'clock. This is 2 hours after school let out.
on a Friday.
On a Friday. And
Yeah.
they're melting down plastic bags to get them out of the environment and find something to do with it. And I did see out of the corner of my eye, here's actually, I guess, that planter that you built.
There's the planter, yeah.
And that's William.
Right. And that's William. Yeah.
So I'm going to flash forward up your page a bit. Oh, look at you there looking all fancy with your...
We love planet Earth. That's in Ottawa, actually. Hey, just wait a sec. Go back just 1 second here. Go back to that picture with William in the background. I just want to mention one thing about that group in front. That group in front with the boy in the blue T-shirt and the others, they were working on an ocean acidification project. They were trying to research the causes of ocean acidification and the way it affects everything from corals to marine life. And they did a fantastic job. And one day I'll have to show you the documentary. They actually made a 15-minute documentary on the topic of how oceans are acidifying.
I mean, I never went to university, but I mean, in high school, I think it's so cool how many different things you have access to, right? Whether it's like TV video equipment to make a documentary, whether it's engineering side, and even if that's just a wood shop that has different tools that you could manufacture things down and build a machine, even if it is just very basic and you're still using body weight and such. But I mean, yeah, you guys have tons of fun here, seeing rockets going off. I'm trying to zoom up to maybe something recent, maybe even Ideas X last year. If you notice anything come up, because I have met a few of your students over the last year. They've come out to some of our events, whether they've been cleanups or came and took part of that Oceans Alive weekend that you curated at the Vancouver Aquarium. So
yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff in there.
Students right there on this is right after Ideas X.
That's the two groups that won, came first and second. The three in the front row, they were the first place winners with the thing that was translated in all the languages. And the group behind is called STOP. That's called STOP, stands for Stop the Ocean Plastic. And there's the beautiful thing about that group is in that picture, that's Jenny Kim, by the way, the teacher.
Or is that the teacher?
The one that looks, yeah, that's the one. He looks like a student.
And I know your students back here. I've met them a couple times.
Yeah, but we were actually, they had us on CTV Morning Live with Carrie Adams and Jason Pyers, and in the group though, that's in the back, the STOP group, they're still doing their work. They're still educating. So that group is still this year, because that picture was last year. They're still going into schools and teaching kids in grade 5 through 7 about plastic pollution, plastic in the oceans, what they can do. They even have them stand up and do a plastic pledge. We promise not to use single-use plastic, and this sort of thing. And it raises this awareness, and kids just seem to get it. And they love hearing it from other students.
Yeah, and we talked about that right after. I was like, can we somehow team up on your education that you set up? Because it was insane what they had actually put together, like their show and tell with the little microplastic sifters that were made out of popsicle sticks and a screen, and like it was that peer-to-peer contact, like they're learning from students that are actually still in the public school system. And maybe that's something that we can look at while we're all in this semi-quarantine mode. Is I know actually Rachel is going to be recording our workshop hopefully next week, where people can audit their personal plastic footprint. That's the one that we've recently made that was supposed to be during the run against plastic. We were going to have one in every week in a different town across Canada. So for right now, what we're going to do is record that. But maybe if the students can, or if it's maybe not suitable in the near future with everyone trying to social distance, but maybe right after we can record their presentation and make it an open source thing for schools that aren't in the Lower Mainland. So for and it doesn't necessarily just have to be Canada. I'm sure we can translate it to an American, to United Kingdom, Australian. Keep it simple for the translations.
Yeah, well, with Plastic Oceans being kind of international offices, there's no reason why each one of them can't jump on board and send them out.
Absolutely. So
education is key.
Is there anything else on your Instagram page that we can pull up over? I mean, I'm happy to bring up anything about, because recently you got real back into the stars, which is your real thing. I just wonder, what are you doing here? You have a trampoline?
It's not a trampoline. This is the fabric of space-time, man. This is the warping of this is gravity, man. This pulls you in.
Okay.
That's what it's all about. I send marbles around that bowling ball, and kids go, what's going on here? And they it's pretty fun, because it's really a demonstration of how Einstein envisioned gravity to be. I could teach you a whole lesson on it if you wanted me to.
Maybe we'll just get the live streaming of your next talk for everyone.
Yeah, maybe.
Actually, I just remembered one thing. Do you have a photo on your Instagram of you started solar powering Walnut Grove High School, didn't you?
Yeah. The picture, actually, if you go back up to the very top, you'll see a more recent one of the classroom. I think way up to the very top. Maybe not quite the top. Go down a bit. Right there, where it says, that one.
This one.
Yes. And it says something about less coal. So in that picture, the little ceiling lamps that are the little pot lights are solar powered. What they're getting their power from is, there's actually in the corner of the classroom, there's a battery which runs because solar power is DC, right? Direct current. And the lights run off of AC, alternating current. So the power from the battery runs through an inverter, and it changes it to AC. And then it wires up through the ceiling into these lights. And each of these lights are about 9 watts a piece. And so the only thing I've got,
right?
Yeah, that's right. And there's 15 of those in the classroom, and it's quite symbolic. Like it's honestly, it's not there to save the school district money, because we're talking about one classroom in a school of 20,000 students.
But it's one of those leading by example things. Like, if your one classroom can power your lights off of solar power, that your students and you worked together on engineering, like just putting, and it's such a, I think, for not just your students, but just the way that you broke it down there, not everyone knows that coming into the battery, you've got DC, and then you've got to have an inverter to change that over to AC, and then you can wire the lights into there, so that's actually pulling off the solar generated power.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a great sort of model that, like you're saying, you're not going to save the school district any money, but it's a huge learning opportunity and a proof of concept that once scaled up,
it's a proof of concept that honestly, there should be a classroom like that in every school, because the symbolism of, typically what you hear about solar is, it's too expensive, or it doesn't work at nighttime, and we live in Vancouver and it rains all the time. And the reality is, there's enough sunlight around to do what as long as you're, you got to be prudent with your power. You're not just running it indiscriminately. I have used LEDs, which are low wattage light source, and there is enough light. And if I have a good storage, which is the battery, then I can run them at nighttime. So there's all kinds of things that you can teach to say this. What the fallacies that go around, sort of the urban legends that solar power doesn't work unless you're living in Arizona, can be all sort of squelched. And you can, of course, and then you can also teach about AC and DC. You can teach about the photoelectric effect. I mean, this is the thing that Albert Einstein got his Nobel Prize for. If you asked the average person, they'd say, Albert Einstein got his his Nobel Prize for E = mc², or the theory of general relativity. Well, no, he actually got it for really describing the principle behind solar power. So it becomes quite an interesting discussion. There's lots to be learned.
Absolutely. And I was kind of thinking about maybe bringing up your thoughts on this because, you said something there that really triggered me. And it was, I guess, these fallacies or these conclusions that people jump to about like how solar wouldn't necessarily work in British Columbia on a larger scale and such. But so right now, with the current situation that we've got going on in the world, we're seeing something extremely interesting happen. And I talked to Andy a little bit about this, and we're watching nature regenerate in certain areas around the world where people have already had to go into self-isolation for even just 2 weeks. Some in China, it's been about a month. But, we're actually seeing the air pollution quality drop out of the sky and birds returning into these cities. In Venice, we're seeing dolphins return into the canals.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this sort of thing happening? Because, I mean, especially with Greta getting all of the momentum she got last year, you got a lot of haters. And we also see that with a lot of the youth that we were mentoring that have a public profile, people kind of hating on them now because they're a young person that maybe hasn't gone to a university to have a degree in this, but preaching that we need to do something to stop the impact. It's starting to rain pretty hard out here. I'm just going to go inside. So maybe I'm not sure if the sound's going to run, but why don't you go for a little run on that whole, right now we're definitely seeing it's a proven fact that we do have a physical footprint on our Earth, and we're watching how it can regenerate if we give the chance to catch its breath.
Well, I've been saying for the last couple of weeks that this whole event with the COVID virus has to change more than just our habits around washing hands and this sort of thing. It has to make us realize that, why are these viruses part of our lives? A big part of it is because humans are moving into parts of the world that we don't normally and haven't naturally lived in. Like if we're going to continue to march deeper and deeper into the Amazon, clear cutting and burning in order to turn it into agricultural land, we're going to become more and more exposed to viruses that we have no immunity to. So the experts I hear are saying that this is just one of many sort of pandemic viral infections that are to come. How do we sort of slow that down? Well, we need to take better care of the earth. We need to live on it in greater harmony. And the thing is, what we're seeing is within weeks, the earth is showing evidence that it's able to recover. It doesn't take ages. This is the thing. I go back to my TEDx talk. I said, when John F. Kennedy in '62 says, we choose to go to the moon, we're not going there because it's easy. We're going there because it's hard. But we will do it, and we'll do it before the decade is out. That was his challenge. Before the decade is out, we'll be on the moon. And we don't have a rocket. We don't have the metals to build a rocket. We don't even know how to build a rocket. But we're going to put men on the moon in 8 years, or less than 8 years. And they did it. And now we say things like in climate and this sort of thing, and it's the same thing with plastic pollution. But by 2050, plastic bags will be banned, or by 2050, there'll be no diesel cars or gas cars in Europe. 2050, that is not a bold move. A bold move was John F. Kennedy saying, in 8 years, we're going to be on the moon. That was bold.
And
what we need to do now is, go ahead.
At the time in history that it was as well, I mean, like we did not have the infrastructure technology that we've got today. And to make these slow goals and marks that you're talking about, it is kind of laughable. And a lot of things have come up recently about, what if we actually reacted like we are to the COVID situation, like we did to the climate crisis. And so many people want to throw that off and being like, oh, it's not really that bad. But as you said, I mean, we're kind of in a situation because we've been attacking the climate so hard.
Yes.
I heard last week, and I don't want to vouch for this source, but apparently this virus, and this is maybe going to touch on, be pretty sensitive for some people, and this is also why we're doing this off the books on it separately from Plastic Oceans and just sharing these after, because opinions are going to come out. But apparently we got this virus from an animal that was one of the first to go on the extinction list. So sadly, and like I said, this might sting a little bit for some people, but we're kind of getting our payback for almost wiping an animal off the earth because of our sort of indulgent society. Now we're being sent to our rooms to think about what we've done, right? And And I'm not sure if that's really sinking in yet to people or if they're really realizing, but I mean, I think having these couple sides where we're watching nature regenerate, we're starting to realize like, oh, if we keep going deeper and deeper, like you said, into the Amazon and having this massive footprint, we're going into the unknown and we can't control that. Nature is way stronger than us. And I think for a lot of years, a lot of people have been saying that we're going to get kicked off first. Like the earth is going to survive. There's been mass extinctions prior. And personally, I don't want to live through it, like because we
Of course,
both
if it's the mass
work on
extinction,
being the solution. So
if it's a mass extinction, you won't live through it.
Well, okay, now
That's
you're
why it's called an extinction, right?
Okay, I don't want to be part of it.
Oh, well, yeah.
I
You won't live through a mass extinction, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know. I guess, did you want to touch on mass extinctions? How much time?
I put something on my Twitter feed about these sort of regenerations that we are seeing evidence of. One of the things is in the areas around northern Italy and in China, some of the greenhouse gases have been tracked by NASA from satellites to have dropped significantly because people aren't traveling around as much, and as a result, cleaner air. Birds are returning, things of this nature. Somebody who I don't know tweeted back and said, "So you're kind of saying that capitalism is a cancer?" Well,
not my words.
I didn't say it, but I mean, in a way, it kind of is, and the way you put it is quite apropos to say that we're kind of given a timeout and go to your room and think about this, and that's what we're being forced into right now. And these things can be reversed. I think what we're seeing in this COVID situation is the world has the will. If the impetus is significant enough, we have the will to do something about it. People don't see climate change or plastic pollution as something that is a strong enough impetus because it doesn't affect me right here. Because here in lower mainland Vancouver, British Columbia, what matters is, do you see how long the lineup is at Starbucks? I want my latte now. That's the strife in our life. And so for example, I'll use this as an example. One of our Walnut Grove accounts said, "Hey, while you're on your spring break, take a selfie with one of your favorite drinks. We'll put it in the yearbook." And the picture that was being circulated was a picture of a single-use plastic drink with a nice plastic straw sticking out the top. I thought, what are you thinking? No, I mean,
I don't understand.
Yeah,
I mean, that's almost like through media and everything, like having that single-use plastic like smoothie drink or frappuccino is a fashionable thing, and like I see that as sort of that's come in from Hollywood, or people or famous people like tweeting about it or Instagramming photos of them having their smoothie. But that's just, I mean, promoting one of the major things that everyone is trying to ban. And I mean, like, we're actually now looking past provincial and municipal bans. Like, we're actually looking at a federal ban of single-use plastics and such. And we all know that that's not like the heavy weight volume that's in the ocean. However, it is a massive impact on the ingestion and the entanglement of sea life. So it's a huge footprint that we can reduce. And then all of a sudden you're promoting people to, oh, you'll look cool if you walk around with this thing.
Yeah. I responded back by saying, and then or take a picture of yourself recycling that single-use plastic properly. Yeah. So anyway, I think that campaign kind of died fairly quickly, thankfully. But it's going to become, speaking of capitalism, it's going to become capitalistically the right thing to do to show as a corporation that we are being responsible. Like really, it's gotten to the point in a very short period of time, a couple or 3 years, where it's not cool for Coke to have their advertising lying in the gutters or sitting in the sewer streams rolling out to the ocean. People look at it and go, "Oh, Coke, what are you going to do about this? This is like bad. Why do you keep putting out these bottles?" And it's becoming socially acceptable, in fact, almost demanded, that you are a socially responsible, environmentally responsible corporation. And if you're not, people are going to say, "Well, screw you. I'm going to go find my products from a company that is."
Well,
And that's
actually,
what we're seeing happen.
so one of the lines I was trying to work into my recent TEDx was, if you support brands that are doing better, they will do better. But
It's true.
my coach and the head curator was like, you can't,
Don't
no,
say
I'm not
better.
giving you the TEDx stage if you're going to say betterer. But no, I believe that, I'm the one that has to deal with the emails that come in. And, we're an extremely young organization. We don't have major corporate sponsors that do bad things. We only align with people that are actually trying to take the right steps. And so we get an email probably once daily by somebody that's trying to start a company, which means that they don't have any profits yet, so there's no contribution to us. But what I'm going with this is everyone wants a socially conscious tag. They all want to say that whether it's 1%, so 1% for the planet that Patagonia started, which is a great initiative and has set that mindset for people when they are going through getting their company up and going, that a percentage of proceeds needs to go somewhere. We're seeing people want to do a lot more than 1% these days. I mean, they're either $1 per item or 10% of profits. Yeah, I mean, sadly for us, because we're so young, we're getting approached by a lot of people that are just getting up and going. So that doesn't provide a large return. And a lot of these sadly will fail. But the thing is, it's nice to see that anyone that's starting a company is already at the beginning stage, figuring out who they want to align with on their messaging and what cause is important to them to have with how they completely operate the whole system and where part of their proceeds go to. We probably don't want to make this too long, but I did want to ask you, as a science teacher, and something that's going on with the reason we stopped the run against, or at least put the run against plastic on hold, is here's a flattening the curve thing that we're working on out here. Can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
So do you, as a science teacher, do you feel that if we do all of these things and, out here in Tofino, we've told everyone to leave so we could flatten the curve and then we can stay in shelter, like right here,
Yeah.
So basically we get the wave. And do you think that this is the safest way to flatten the curve for everyone right now?
Well, this is what's going. This is the strong messaging that we're hearing, and the pink curve that you've got there is, if we do nothing, then you're going to see 70% of the population infected. But that's not what's going to happen. What will happen is the blue one, because the distancing measures and the closing of public spaces. I see just today, what is today, the 22nd of March, Vancouver Parks Board has just closed all public beaches. They simply want people to stay home, even down in White Rocks.
Vancouver Parks Board. I thought you meant Parks Canada, because
No.
Pacific Rim, I know they stopped visitor services, but I was surfing Long Beach last night, and you could still at least park there.
Yeah, well, in Vancouver, they've closed down all beaches and parks, and down in White Rock, the pier in White Rock is so heavily walked still that the mayor of White Rock has said, "Look, seriously, guys, if you don't take this seriously, we're going to close the pier as well." And so the only way that this virus can be stopped is by social distancing. The idea that, well, I feel fine. Yeah, but you just don't know. In the 14 or so days that this incubation period exists, who have you come in contact with? And that it becomes untraceable. So you're going to see some stronger measures coming through, even in the next few days, about how the government's going to want us to stay apart.
Yeah, and I saw, I think yesterday, or maybe it was even this morning, that there was about 200 to 300 people on the Chief yesterday in Squamish. So for those that are watching that don't know about it, it's one of the most famous rock climbing and even just hiking. It's a pretty basic hike for most people, but there is a ladder section. So when you have 300 people all
grabbing hold,
different places grabbing hold on the same ladder, and it doesn't matter if you wash your hands when you get down. But I think it's been a bit of a shock, right? People all of a sudden, everything's closed, schools are closed, no public events. Everyone kind of goes home and they're like, oh, well, let's go out. And I mean, I saw you do it. I mean, you weren't going out to crowded places, but you and your wife were like, yeah, we're going to go hiking here. We're going to go on a bike ride. We're going to go to the lake and go kayaking. But it was just, you guys weren't going to a crowded area, and everyone kind of did that this last week. But I think we are going to see a little bit more of a crackdown. Like you're saying, they're already closing public beaches and White Rock Pier potentially next, because it doesn't really work to to close
Well,
everything down so people stay away from each other, and then they all go to the same spot.
we were at Widgeon Creek off of Pitt River, a very isolated place. But a few days before that, we hiked up First Pump Peak up Seymour. Well, a couple of days later, Seymour was shut right down. Now, the day that we were there were a lot of people there hiking, and there were a lot of people there skiing. All the lineups were full. The lists were busy.
Okay.
But there wasn't. But since then, Seymour and all the North Shore Mountains have closed.
I didn't realize that the North Shore Mountains actually stayed open that long, because I know
Yeah,
the interior and Whistler and everyone closed down. So they were later to close, which is interesting.
they were.
Hmm.
They were, and I think that the message coming out of Ottawa today is your freedom to move around in our free democratic society really doesn't depend on the government or the law enforcement. It depends on us. If we choose to continue to abuse our rights and privileges, they're going to say, well, you're not taking it seriously. So now we impose the right to restrict your movement. And because the British Columbia government has imposed a state of emergency, within that, it does allow them to limit and restrict your movement within the province. So literally they could say, well, you're not going to go to Tofino. You're not going to go to Whistler. And if you get caught trying to, you're going to be turned around, maybe even ticketed. And they have a right to do that. Now, they're not doing that yet, but
Well,
they can.
Tofino, I mean, and look, we got onto COVID, but at least it's at the end, right? We'll give it
It's,
5 minutes, and then
it's a worldwide thing. You can't get away from
yeah.
it right now.
I mean, this is why we're sitting here having this conversation, is we're both kind of stuck, not doing anything. But yeah, Tofino, I think it was Wednesday, announced it, because yeah, I ran into a friend on the trail who works for the chamber on Tuesday, I think Tuesday afternoon, and she was saying they just came out of the meeting. They're like, I think we're actually gonna have to shut down town. And I was like, sadly to say, I think it's the right call. And spring break's coming up. Everyone's in the red after a cold winter, and not too many people here. And I mean, the whole town relies on this week, just like many other towns across the world. And I feel for everyone here, but we had to do it. I was literally just in the grocery store. I'm not panic buying, but what I'm doing is I kind of go every day just to see if new things show up that I don't have, because you don't know when it's going to get to that stage. And right now we don't have a food security issue. We don't have a fuel issue, but people are panic buying. So like, there's just lots of things missing. So anyway, I was just there, and they said, I had my reusable bags, and they were saying, oh, by the way, starting tomorrow, you can't bring reusable bags in. And I get it. I like 100%. I mean, it's an unprecedented time. So what are we going to do? And they're like, yeah, we've got paper bags and we've got boxes. But
look at what the world can do when A, we listen to the science, and B, we all agree that there's a singular enemy and we're going to go after it hard. What needs to happen as we pull through this is we need to look at the other things on the planet that are also requiring this sort of attention. Are we going to go hard after plastic pollution? Are we going to go hard after climate change? Are we going to go hard after the things that are going to affect the oceans in such a way when the oceans are acidifying, when we've heard a lot of the last 2 or 3 weeks about the herring stocks in the coast of BC. Are we going to go hard after these things? And we've proven now you can go back and say, well, look what we did with COVID. Now we can look at these other things that also need a significant amount of attention.
There's a lot of good articles coming out about people saying, government's always pushing back, saying that, oh, well, we can't do that because it's too much effort or there's too much red tape. Well, COVID's really proven to us what we can do when we have to. And I think, I highly agree. Obviously, with the topic we work on, plastic pollution, it would be great if, I think we've got enough attention right now, but I think action. But we're going in the right direction. I mean, we're looking at federal bans on single use. We've got right before everything shut down, actually the day before, it's February 28th, the day before the TEDx, I was at a government thing for massive bills or massive funds for innovation on alternatives and processing into second life or end of life. So those things don't become available unless it's actually a priority, right? So I think here in Canada, our government is prioritizing alternatives and solutions and working towards legislation. It should happen a little bit quicker, But then, I mean, this kind of goes into, like you're saying, all these other topics. I think that now is a time as we come out of this that we can reevaluate, we can restructure and think about how we take our next step forward, and how we can kind of reduce our everything footprint. And, you know, coming through this, I mean, we've got a lot of people that are, you know, pretty scared financially coming through this, but, you know, in charity, like, people are not compensated for their time in any in any respectful way. So I think that coming through this, you know, like, if you're worried about your mortgage or everything, right now our government has actually said that we're all going to be protected. But what I'm seeing a lot of people do is going and binge buying booze and buying lottery tickets and still wasting their money. And all I would do is say, like, you don't have to donate to Plastic Oceans Canada if that's not your cause. But, you know, instead of going, you're not going to the bar right now, you're not eating out at restaurants, you're not going to big hockey games or concerts. If you can find $5, $10 to donate to whatever you believe in, whether that's Red Cross or whether it's human rights, but just take this time to maybe reevaluate where your priorities are, not to go and get another box of wine in case the liquor stores close. You know,
Mhm.
to me, it's a waste. You know that I don't even really drink anymore. And that's just a personal choice because of how good I felt after not, or just even dropping the dailies. And so the thing is, that's something I feel really strongly about. We already are underpaid and overworked, and in all charity across any sort of topic. So just maybe pick the cause that you believe in and help them get through the other side of this. You know,
Yeah.
but right now we've got our government's putting in subsidies. We've got banks that are taking evasive action to make sure mortgages can kind of go on hold, and interest on credit cards are going to be put on hold, as far as I've been hearing, and hearing from my banks that we're going to get through this.
Mhm.
But yeah, whatever cause you believe in, it's going to be a hard time for anyone to keep operating because people aren't donating. So $5, $10 is going to go a long way. Pick the thing that you care about. Don't go and buy that extra bottle of wine. That's all it's going to take, right? If everyone,
Plasticoceans.ca.
okay, well, hey, if you want to shamelessly promote us, it'd be great to, you know, keep our team going. Luckily
Yeah.
for our team, everyone put up their hand and just we started minimizing hours. You know, as you know, I basically do this for free anyway, pretty much minimum wage whenever I do get anything. But the other thing is, yeah, we do have people that can't do that, right? So everyone started minimizing their hours. Everyone's going to be protected starting April, you know, to get a little bit of assistance. And everyone's also said that they're going to volunteer their time that they have available to keep us ticking over and to keep content coming out. So
Mhm.
we're lucky in that sense that we're so young and have a great team that all basically came to us and said, how can I get involved? And we created positions around them.
Yeah.
But is there anything you want to close on, if even if it is COVID, or some last thoughts by Mr. Stevenson?
Well, yeah, like the one that's crossing my mind is just there is hope in the generation of our youth today. I have another group of kids right now who are doing this really cool project. They're building a plastic processing machine. Their vision is this is going to be your own home-based plastic recycling center. So anything that you use, from milk jugs to shampoo bottles, you'll run it through this machine and you can turn it into any sort of product you want. And now we're with some of the closures going on, we're kind of set back time wise a little bit, but this is the sort of thing that's going on in schools right now. Is students are seeing a vision for what they're passionate about. And the motto that I've been using is, it's not your major anymore. You used to be asked all the time, what are you going to major in university? It's not your major now. What is your mission? And so the mission among kids these days is earth centered, and it's sustainability centered. And this one project that we're involved in right now is going to be, you're going to hear about it in the news. Like, it's going to be that big, I believe. We just got to get it,
I know what's
in
going on
running. We've
as
done
we
some.
talk, but yeah, pay
Mhm.
attention to Mr. Stevenson's page. We're going to have that in this video
Great.
link so you can follow that. Should I talk about the basic model, or do any hints on where your students have been learning this concept from, or should we just leave everyone wondering about what's going on?
No, you got me wondering, what are you talking about?
Well, the precious plastic modeling, you know, the open
Oh yeah.
source designs where you can really, you can get the base idea. I've used them a few times. It's not I mean, it's kind of advertised as here's the specs, go and build it in your backyard, and boom, you've got a little micro business recycling. It's not that simple, but
No, it's not.
but the thing is, it's a good base, right? And
It
also, a
is.
colleague who you introduced us to in the East Coast, Guillaume, he's got a whole foundation going on with a similar. I just say similar in the fact that they're trying to value plastics, and I know he's got hundreds of students working on business plans at the moment. So this
Yeah.
is a really cool thing to see, and I think that you hit the nail right on the head. We've got students that are finding solutions to global problems at a high school level.
Yeah. It's
What
when
more could you ask
really,
for, right?
oh, no, exactly. And it's what we should be doing more of. This is what the focus in schools needs to be. A little bit less about, the Chapter 4 test next Tuesday, and a little bit more about something that really is going to have lasting value. And that's been the focus of my entire career. Apparently about 27 years is what I've done. And I'll continue to do it because I think it's the most significant, important thing that I can do as a teacher.
Well, we thank you very much for doing those 27 years. And I know we have discussed you wanted to retire and start running expeditions around the world fixing global issues. And
Oh, that'd be so cool.
I might have to arm wrestle Walnut Grove or Langley School District to get you, but who knows? You know, if anyone watches this and they want to go with Mr. Stephenson somewhere around the world and learn about the stars at night and how to fix
Oh,
issues
man.
during the day,
That'd be so
it's
awesome.
a shout at plasticoceans.ca, and you can follow his Instagram. We'll have the link up there. But thank you very much, Tim.
Okay, you're very
Hopefully
welcome.
this doesn't last too long, and hopefully we get to see each other in person again soon.
Okay, thanks, Adrian.
Take
See ya.
care.